So the Institute became a center space for producing what didn't exist. The elements were all around us, right? And we created a new thing. But then the fate of new things is to enter the world of repetition. Don't we, what are we doing? What do we do when we have pleasure? We want to reproduce it. But then the reproduction always risks decay, automatons, doing things without thinking. So how to create a social entity that sustains itself through reproduction, but not at the expense of novel production. That's the paradox of one. That's the vision of this. And it goes one way or the other. And just as you see, I can talk as if it was still existing in my memory as it was, but it's not. That's, I said goodbye at 4 p.m. on June 30th, 2006. Turned an 8. Didn't even go back for 3 years. The university wants the alumni's money. They like their presence. But so far, with some exceptions, I'd like to think we started something. We haven't asked for the gifts of their talent. And that's a huge resource. If you want to really affirm me, you ought to affirm my work and use what I've learned on behalf of where I've learned a lot and give some of that back instead of just the money. Not in addition to, but along with it. And I had the hardest time trying to get that through, and most of it failed to do it. But there were some happy exceptions. Right? And I have never seen commitments grow more warmly and more rapidly if you're asking someone to give of their talent, their experience, their expertise, including not always here on campus, but in California. We'll have a little, we'll take it out there for a weekend, right? So we go anywhere to be mobile. Does that mean? Yeah, that's that. Too little. And for too little. The longer you wait, see, it's all about building relationships. Not pseudo trying to sell you something. I used to take great delight in interrupting the encyclopedia salesman when he came to my house, because I knew he had a set speech and I was figuring out how to interrupt him. It's gaining people's understanding of what you do because you talk to them first about what they do. Now that person that act.
Yeah. He was explaining what arbitrage was.
Yeah.
Right.
And he was in his trade room, and there were 25 desks there. It was 4:45 in the afternoon, and we were sitting talking. I noticed one of his eyes kept going up that way, and I didn't know there was a monitor up there giving to stop. That's how green I was. Wall Street. But then, yeah, so he gave me a tour. You see, I didn't talk too much about this. That was just the first meeting. So you, on their territory, you talk to them about their thing. Okay, enough of that, but you get the point.
But this conversation is still a conversation.
Oh, it's still a conversation.
Whether it's on campus,
right,
or it's with,
right.
It's about building a conversation.
That's right. That's right.
So this was this whole thing about kill the chemistry labs and keep the cafeteria. And that man said that to me. I'm like, yeah, I'm sitting, I told him, I looked up at the sky because I knew that was like the most awesome quote.
Yeah.
I knew it would be right in the middle of the chapter. I didn't know what chapter because, and it was so consistent with everything that you believe.
Yeah.
That the conversation is more important than the substance because it will lead to things. So a lot of this was about people coming, you know, I'm joking, but not really, about coming back for a fix. But
yeah.
It's essentially to come back and be re-engaged at when they aren't engaged in their day-to-day life, right? I mean, their day-to-day life doesn't meet the same level of excitement that they got here, right? And then faculty sort of the same way.
And the evening we held a dinner over in the Moorhead after the autumn Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And spontaneously, former student alumni stood up and began toasting their teachers who were in the room that they remembered. And not just in general, but with anecdotes about the classroom.
So how did you get Dean Smith to be a fellow at the Institute and come to the seminars every?
Well, as prosaic as it sounds, I wrote him a letter. I read in the paper. It's good to read the paper.
Yeah, this is a good story.
I read in the paper.
He wants to make sure he's getting this right.
I read in the paper he was writing his autobiography. Well, it so happened that the group of, this was in the summer, and the group of fellows who were going to start in late August, they have all of the fall semester together. There were 2 or 3 of them that happened to be very interested in autobiography as a genre. So I wrote him a letter and said, consider coming over as a fellow because you're writing your autobiography, and we have these interesting people. And I said, no, I got to hear back. Well, within 10 days I had a reply. I'd be glad to accept. With the first meeting, he didn't miss but 1 session out of the 13. Now, also what happened, he recruited at least 3 of those fellows to be a part of the basketball program. See, you don't ever stop. Along with 2 timekeepers and a few other things. All of them had played high school basketball, you see.
One was a poet.
They all came like flies to the bucket.
One was a poet, right?
Oh, that's right. Professor Shapiro. Okay. He died timekeeper. So you never stop practicing your trade, even when you retire. And you could tell tonight.
And how did you break to the other fellows that one of their fellows?
Well, they didn't believe me. I thought Tyson he's off on another windmills. But they were surprised and delighted, and he got a very warm welcome. And as I say, he only missed one session, which is extraordinary.
And has been very devoted to the Institute.
Yes, on our board and on donor. Yeah.
So this.
Well, in the interest of time, we resort to cliche, but it doesn't mean that the cliches are uttered without passion and commitment. I take my bearings from Immanuel Kant, and he has 3 maxioms of common human understanding. The first one is, think for yourself. That's called the principle of the autonomy of thought. But the second one is take the standpoint of the other. And then you look back at what you were thinking about in the first maxim, thinking for myself, and I've got to change some views because I've just learned something about the limitations or inadequacy of my view. So that generates an arc of input and correction, modification. The third maxim is impossible to live, but it goes like this: think consistently. See, the first 2 correct each other, and then how do you get consistency out of that? Well, it's not going to be a logical consistency, it's not going to be a gated synthesis, it's going to be a consistency of relationship and the technique with which you employ to solve problems. That's the long-winded answer to a monumental question. But I think, to put it down to 1 sentence, absence of capacity to deal with difference at every level. That's what I would say.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. And maybe do you have a better insight into why the Institute exists now?
Yeah. Well, I thank you for your attention. The Spanish philosopher, I can't say it anymore. Said, the most elementary form of love is attention.
Wow.